We will call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Anyone wishing to do so, there's a flag in the corner. You can join Tim Wiles in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim. Luann, is there any public input? All right, thank you very much. Megan, construction update, and anyone else who's here from BRMA or Turner?
Pete Roy is also here from Turner.
Hi, Pete.
Hello. You want to take the
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. Hopefully you love your facility. I think it looks phenomenal. Great designer.
Hey, before you start, before you start, we want to thank you both for sponsoring the golf tournament, and Pete, in your case, for playing in it. So thanks.
Absolutely. It was a joy. Unfortunately, I was cut off after 9 holes.
Oh, did you? Okay.
But still, it was a great time. So anyways, just to get everybody up to speed, what you'll see left in the project now is also what we call a punch list, if you're not familiar with the term, which is basically just going around and as you can see, exactly, making everything look the way it's supposed to look in a finished product. So you will see some areas where they're blue taped off, etc. We've got about, I'm going to guess, between materials and labor availability, we've probably got another couple of weeks, but it's not where it's everybody is here. Nobody is here right now. I mean, as Tim, I'm sure, and Lou and the crew have seen it. We have people that show up every couple of days whenever they can between their other projects that they're on. But we expect to probably within the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks or so have basically everything wrapped up and done. But there's only a couple of pieces that are actual construction work that needs to be done. And we were just talking about that. We're very, very fortunate. One of the few projects that I'm working on right now where we didn't have delays because of material issues from the last year with COVID and factories shutting down. We were affected by only one piece, and that was the glass partition in Area A, the new addition, which we're actually, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to see that within the next 7 to 10 days. And that's coming from Europe. So it was just basically a factory shutdown. It was supposed to be here in May, the original schedule, and we're hoping to see that in the next couple. But overall, I think we are, again, just buttoning up the last few things. We had a great meeting with some of the team yesterday, and I'll be getting that completion punch list over to Tim in the next day or two after I finalize some things. But any questions at all on the timeline? Yes, go ahead.
I would just say that he's entirely right with everything he's said. But when you're on the working end of it, whether you're a contractor or an architect or a library staff person, we are 98, 99% done, but the 1 or 2% is a lot to deal with. So, we're close.
I would say it's the hardest to deal with.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, in many ways, it's often the hardest part to deal with. Is just get that over the hump to get that last few pieces done.
Mhm.
So, but we're there. We're very close. So, any questions at all?
All right, so that was our schedule, which we continue to say that we've been on schedule. We hit all the milestones. And then in terms of budget, just the spreadsheet or summary I showed each month, nothing unforeseen or unexpected. We've had just very minimal final change order pieces. So we've spent we've paid out almost everything on our construction hard cost values in terms of the construction prime contracts, no work. And so we contingency with our allocation for change orders that were either owner requested or field conditions that needed to be addressed. Our floor finishing, which was our material cost for the carpeting. And then in terms of project soft costs, we're also spending those down. So we've just continued to maintain the budget that we set forth back in September when we had our bids come in. So everything looks good for our budget. And then the other thing to talk about is schedule, which I know Tim sent out in an email yesterday. We're, as Pete just said, we're finishing up the pencils work, or the pencils work is underway. So technology is starting next week for in terms of screens, projectors, and other amenities. The shelving installation has been pushed back a little bit due to COVID issues in terms of production. So the shelving is due to start being installed August 30th and will be complete by September 10th. And then there's some other dates in there for the preliminary walkthrough for our certificate of occupancy, Labor Day weekend. We have Clancy, who does the collection relocation work, scheduled for the week of September 13th. Some final furniture and installations also the week of September 13th. Professional cleaning, a final walkthrough for our certificate of occupancy so we can have our soft opening the week of September 20th, which is those sneak peek hours that Tim had described. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, a certain set of hours, and Tuesday, Thursday, another. And then the end of September for going back to the regular scheduled open hours. So that's our schedule right now. Things have become a little bit vague at the end, which is a little frustrating, where some of our furniture vendors who were scheduled to be shipping their products this week or last week have now been sending out updates saying, sorry, we have material delays or production delays and we can't ship when we want to. So we've got some lounge chairs that are going to be behind, some tables that are behind, but I think the most important part is getting the shelving installed in the next few weeks and getting the collection relocated so that the facility can open up to the public again. So we'll get everything else in as best we can. And we'll work with everything with the vendors to get everything in as quickly as possible. So, any questions about schedule? I know it's actually a little more ambiguous than last month, but we're doing our best with all the changes that are currently happening. That was our update for construction schedule and budget. Yes, Tim?
I guess the only thing I would add on the schedule is something I had emailed the board about, which is keeping an eye on COVID. So Kathy's here. I'm sorry I couldn't find you for a second, but Kathy and I chatted via text, and we're kind of thinking we should set a COVID committee meeting soon, which would of course affect you as well. We didn't chat with you, so you're the chair of the committee, but to address those issues like whether we should continue to quarantine material. Apparently there's starting to be some research and thinking that plexiglass shields might do more harm than help, things like that. So I had said in my email that around September 13th would be approximately 2 weeks before September 27th. But it seems to me, after texting a couple times with Kathy today, that sooner would be better, would kind of be my thought. So for COVID side of things. So, and reiterating, if we were opening today, if today was September 27th, we'd, according to our plan, be opening by appointment only. So it's unfortunate, but it is where we're at with that disease. So anyway.
I'll just defer to you if you want me to show the graphics we were putting.
Sure, yeah, that'll be fun for people that aren't on the committee.
We've been working on what to do with our lobby entrance wall as you walk into the building. We're going to have, as you know, right now it's just sort of a blank white wall with the 2 windows that look into the sorting room. So we wanted to do something that was very much Guilderland and placed everyone as they walked into the building. And we found this lovely photo as we were looking for a few others. This is actually by your very own Richard Rubin. It was a nice. So what we'd like to do is a vinyl wall graphic with this image. Cut around the 2 windows for viewing into the sorting room. The blue rectangle that's there is a placeholder for where the actual sorting machine goes through the wall. And the black rectangle to the right is a TV screen which will be mounted to the wall, so that'll have scrolling information in terms of wayfinding events in different meeting rooms and such. And then the welcome to your library would be post-mounted letters that are sort of 3-dimensional off the wall. But this was sort of our tribute to Guilderland and place marking as we enter the library.
And thought on it is nothing's etched in stone really, but depending on what it costs to print and install this, we would theoretically have the flexibility to have a new image every 2 or 3 years to kind of refresh the entryway. So you'll have to get busy with your camera. So.
Give me some notice.
And then the other component we've been working on is, now that we've reoriented how you enter the library proper, going into the left and walking along the long skylight and ending at the fish tank, we wanted to also take advantage of the wall space at the end of the skylight and say welcome in the 60 different languages that are spoken within the Guilderland School District Charter to Serve area. So this is welcome in 59 of those languages. We've been talking about how this manifests itself, because it's a somewhat new idea still at the committee level. And even one of the staff today recommended or suggested that maybe we do this as a projection rather than an actual vinyl installation on the wall.
Which in part would allow us to adjust it as new languages come. And also, as soon as we showed it to our staff in the staff meeting today, we had a Chinese staff member say, well, your Chinese isn't exactly right. So we think that could happen 58 more times theoretically. So it would give us the ability to change that, and also to do seasonal messaging, or if we had one of the grand speakers that might get 500 people into that room, to put a backdrop behind the speaker, that sort of thing.
Either way, it's beautiful. It's very nice.
If any of you recognizes a language that you speak and can verify that it's correct, that would be great. But we will be sending out a list to like the whole library community, and trying to figure out if we can work with the school district to get the families in question to verify that we have the correct spelling and phrasing and et cetera of their language. And we are going to stick English in there too,
Yes.
for anyone who's noticed that it's not there.
Nice job.
That was my whole presentation for this evening. We're winding down.
In fact, I think it's probable that we will not have a Turner representative at our next board meeting. Megan, I'm guessing we'll still have you at our next board meeting. Is that
I would
probably?
expect so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't aid me, that's okay.
And I'll go by your guidance and Megan's guidance. If it makes sense for me to be here, I certainly can.
So I want to kind of jump in for just a second and say that, we're not done yet, as Pete pointed out and as Megan also pointed out, but this process could have been difficult to work with the architect or the construction manager, or in fact, some of the trades, in fact, all of the trades. We really have not had any problems to speak of for the entire process that have to do with personnel. And so you guys have made it really, really easy for us, and we're really appreciative of that. You're probably used to the fact that the people, the owners, if you will, as you call the people from your projects, they don't know what you do. So not only do you have to do it, but you have to kind of translate it to us all the time. And we really appreciate how you've been great. So thank you. Mhm.
All right, Kathy, do you have a design committee report?
Okay, well, we had a few change orders, a lot fewer than we have had in the past. I think we had about a $3,000 change order to install the fireplace mantle and change some of the colors in there. And we had a $857.05 change order to install lock sets on the sliding glass doors, which I guess is a little bit expensive to do, because it was realized that the keys were not the same, and they wanted to key all of the locks the same, be consistent. And then there was actually $7,430.99 for actually improvements to our boardroom, technology improvements. I could probably go into more detail if I had better notes, but it's adding a capability for remote participation. Kind of bottom line, there's other microphones, so we won't have to pass microphones around and sort of things like that. So, and I think there were Megan already noted that we've had extensive discussions about the welcome wall with the Hubbard design and the language we've talked about quite a bit. I know we've also talked about the signage for the different rooms, like what's the best way to put the signs on. And I do note, I think in the sign, in the names of the rooms, I think it was incorrect. I think they still had orchard on there. I think we had changed that to the lupine as opposed to the orchard, so that change should be made on there. And also, we were talking about doing a shed, but the slab came in really expensive, so we were kind of trying to figure out a better way to do that. And I think there were some cabinets in the children's area. I don't know, maybe Megan, did we decide what we were gonna do with the cabinets in the children's area?
I bet that was approved,
Okay.
that we're gonna add 2 additional tall pantry cabinets in the children's new program room, so they have some additional storage for all the materials.
Okay, yes, that was my, my recollection, although I don't have a number because I think we had gone back and forth because it was.
We got the original.
Initially, it was expensive and it was,
Around 8,500.
8,500.
How exactly? Close.
all right, that sounds great, okay. And that was pretty much it, other than talking a lot about names for rooms and signs and the welcome, and you already saw that graphic, so that was pretty much what we have talked about in design. If anybody else has anything that I missed.
Is there a motion we have to make, just because it's bolded? So that usually means there is one, but if there's not one on design,
That's the room names which are in the packet. And as Kathy says, the one that is called the Orchard should be called what? The Lupin Room? Is that it?
I think that's what the board
Okay.
has decided.
So you have to, if you vote on it with that change. So it's the second from the bottom. The Orchard was felt to be fairly generic, and Lupin is very specific in a way to this area. And also kind of sounds real nice, you know.
So, with that change, then is there a motion to approve the room name?
motion by Noreen,
I'll second it.
second by Peter. All in favor, we'll do a show of hands. All right, excellent. Unanimous at 6:19. The room names as proposed with the amended Orchard to be Lupin is approved.
So I'm wondering, Caitlin, if Pete and Megan are wanting to get on their way, and maybe, even though I'm not the chairman of the board, whether we should just ask if there are any more building-related questions before they go.
Yes. Are there any more building-related questions before they go?
Because I assume you want to go. So,
All right, thank you both very much for being here and for your continued hard work.
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.
That brings us to E, the treasurer's report for July 2021 and the check register for August 21. Tony?
Hi, everybody. So I looked over all the statements at the same time, similar to all prior months. Starting with the income statement, there was just a small amount of income this month, basically investment income. The expenses came in around $247,000. Last month was $269,000, and the year prior, so July 2020, was $269,000 as well. That $22,000 difference was mostly the result of materials. It was about $31,000 last month. This month was about $15,000. But other than that, the expenses came in near identical to the prior month. That $247,000, I then confirmed that was on the balance sheet. It's on the second page under the capital. So that was reflected. And the next thing I looked at the balance sheet is just making sure all of the cash changes were accounted for. So starting with the current assets, going down the list and checking those off compared to prior months, and then totaling against the cash changes in cash balance in the capital and the liabilities. Looking for a couple things, making sure that the net loss was accounted for and also the bond anticipation notes. As construction develops throughout the month, you would expect some of those work in process costs to be reflected in construction and process. And ticking and tying everything, it all came out to the dollar. So that was good. About 498,621 was the total. Next was to make sure that the cash decrease for the operating expenses was accounted for. That was, and also accounts payable went down, so debt was paid off. That's where the remaining cash was spent. You'll also notice under fixed assets that compared to prior months, so that's plural months, the net depreciation went up. Those are kind of one-time adjustments that are done on the books of the library, and those are all accounted for across the board. So the balance sheet looked good, consistent with the income statement. Looking at the check register, there was really nothing of significance to mention in the check register. Basically, the approach is to kind of tick and tie some of the expenses and make sure they're from common descriptions and just in common payees or recipients that seem to fall in place. So really nothing of note for the check register. In summary, the income statement reflected a net loss, which was appropriately reflected on the balance sheet. Everything seemed to match out. So no issues for the month.
Any questions for Tony? I see on our check register, we got a new AED machine. Was our other one expired?
It wasn't expired, they no longer manufacture the batteries we needed.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So, Tim checked with the town and asked for the recommendation before we
Great.
purchased anything, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I saw that in conjunction with CPR training for staff, and that's a great way to roll into reopening the library to the public. So, excellent. No questions for Tony. Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report for July 2020 and the check register for August 2021 as presented? Motion by Kathy. Is there a second? By Marcia. All in favor? Aye. Richard? In favor?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So that is unanimous at 6:24. Moving on to committee reports. I don't believe any committees met last month because we really didn't have any established yet. At the last meeting, there was 3 policies presented to go over from sort of the holdovers from a year of COVID. So those were presented. I have records retention, review of public services, which was missing a letter. We changed it the to an and then we have our security camera policy. So they were presented at the last board meeting for everyone's consideration, so we could move to a vote this evening. So we can do these one at a time. Is there a motion to accept the records retention policy as presented? Motion by Kathy. Is there a second? Norina. Okay, got it. Norina. Is there a discussion regarding the records retention policy? No discussion. So we'll go to a vote. We'll start by just a show of hands. If it's not unanimous, then we'll do a roll call for the record. So all in favor of the records retention policy? Excellent, unanimous at 6:25. The records retention policy passes. Moving on to the review of public services. That is, we changed the brochure to a brochure. Is there a motion to accept the review of public services policy as presented?
Can you just,
Yes.
were Michael's concerns addressed about some of the particulars about discrimination?
That policy got kicked to committee.
Okay.
That was a specific, and that is no longer, there were 4 presented. There were too many questions about that. We'll go back since it is a new board and policy committee will look at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So is there a motion for the review of public services policy? Kathy, is there a second? Richard? All in favor? All right, excellent, unanimous by show of hands at 6:26 PM. Next is the security camera policy. This was not a change in policy, but a new policy. And I believe, Sean, you also worked on some of this as well, so thank you. Is there a motion to accept the security camera policy as presented? Motion by Noreen, is there a second? Second by Richard. We'll do another show of hands. All in favor? All right, excellent. By show of hands, unanimous at 6:27 PM. Thank you very much. That concludes the policy update. Thank you, everyone. Next, we'll move on to G, the directors and department heads report for July 2021.
Nothing on UHLS?
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. The foundation had their, I don't know, maybe possibly annual golf tournament. We, instead of doing a gala this year at this point, they switched up to a golf tournament. Tim, you golfed?
Sure, I'll tell a little bit about it. The event was very successful. There were 19 sponsors, 6 at the $1,000 level. 5 of them were corporations, and 1 of them was a patron who I was about to name, but I probably better not, but a very generous individual, and we thank him for that. Longtime library supporter. And then there were 5 companies that sponsored at the $500 level, and the remainder were T-Box sponsors at $150. There were 47 golfers who paid $125 each to play golf. And then the cost, oddly enough, that the course charges per golfer was $47. So that's kind of an interesting numerical parallel. And there were 72 donors of either, bought tickets to the 19th hole or gave prizes to the silent auction. So the foundation hasn't done the numbers yet, but the income, the revenue, I should say, rather than income on it is probably between $16,000 and $18,000, which is very strong and comparable to a gala. I don't have any idea what the costs were other than that the cost of the golf was about $2,400. So we can clearly subtract that. Now, it's not my job. It's the foundation treasurer, Ann Lala, and she'll be totaling all that up soon, I'm sure. But a very successful event. We thank everyone who was involved and the board members who were involved. Thank you for that. It does appear that it's an annual event because there are already 2 corporate sponsors and 3 golfers for next year. So if you missed it this year, feel free to join us. It was very informal and the best ball format. So even if you're playing golf for the second time in your life, like I was, it was still very enjoyable. So.
I'll just add that you could probably make that golfers 4 and 5, so that my husband and I can play for the second time.
Yay! Cool.
It was good fun.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone who attended and participated. And I'm just sorry I couldn't be there myself. So Tony, UHLS.
I reached out to Tim Burke after our last meeting. He informed me there was no meeting in August. The next meeting's in September. In that meeting, they're going to separate staff into different committees or members. So I'll have more to report for the next meeting, but there was no activity for August.
Thank you so much, Tony. All right. Thank you, Jenna. Now, G, the directors and department heads reports for July 2021.
Okay, doke. So the first thing I'd like to mention for the benefit of the public and staff and board members, there was some slight confusion about the fact that we revoked our mask wearing policy last month. But our policy that you must wear a mask over your nose and your mouth at all times within the building remains in effect. It's just in effect under a slightly different authority. So we removed it from the actual policies of the Guilderland Public Library and placed that ability to set mask policy with a two-person ad hoc committee consisting of Caitlin and myself. We met after the last board meeting, and it took us about 30 seconds to keep the mask policy in effect. And since that time, COVID, of course, has considerably worsened, so I'm glad that you were on the committee, Caitlin. Because at that particular moment, I thought Albany was kind of out of the woods for a while, but I was wrong. So that's good. So I just want to mention that it's in effect. You saw in my report that general areas I've been working on are construction, COVID. I mentioned that we had an immigration concern with an employee that unfortunately we were unable to get congressional help, and so the employee passed the date by which they could continue working here and must wait for the federal government to catch up with the case backload. So that was a little bit of a negative for us, but an interesting process to work with Paul Tonko's office and Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. Working with some new board members last month was an interesting part of my job. We also have an issue that we're working on right now about renewing our insurance for the upcoming year, selecting and now implementing hearing assistance technology and building technology in general were things I worked on during during July. The upgrade of the solar system, which is very minor, but the solar array, I should say, the solar system remains as good as it's ever been. But the $3,000 upgrade just to make sure that our solar panels can communicate with our data system. And then, of course, we had a staff development day, and the first part of that day was active shooter training, which was generously and excellently provided by Guilderland Police Department. And that's a pretty heavy subject for the first half of the day. So we have been so busy. Typically what we've done for Staff Development Day is to have a full day. We often go to a town park like Tawasenta, and we have seminars and training sessions in the morning, followed by a lunch, and then some recreational and team building activities in the afternoon. I didn't have any time to plan that, so I just said, we're just going to do active shooter training and we're going to be done. And much to my, I greatly appreciated the fact that 3 staff members said, well, let us go ahead and plan an afternoon of activities for you. So that was Amy McCarthy, Elizabeth Smith, and Michelle Conti from the Programming and Public Services, or PPS department. A little, without going into great history here, but my understanding of the history of Staff Development Day is that 10, 12, 14, however many years ago that it started, it was a difficult thing to convince the current board that we needed to close for a day for that sort of professional learning and also sort of team building and so forth. It's become an integral part of our efforts, and I'm sure it will continue. But I did note with interest that the town does something not quite the same, but rather similar, called Staff Appreciation Day. And I just kind of wanted to plant the seed, since we're at least a year away from doing that again. It's typically done in June, that we might want to change the name of that and maybe change the focus of it a little bit. We've as a library community, been through a lot in the last year and a half, and looks like some of that is going to continue. And I, for one, think appreciation is an important element of that. So just want to plant that seed. You'll note that we have a new electronic sign out here, generally working well, but still taking care of some troubleshooting on it. And I just want to point out, I don't want to read everybody's report, but the PPS department really had a successful summer reading program under difficult circumstances for the second year in a row. And to me, the most intriguing thing about it, summer reading programs, of course, are traditional and are historically about kids, but across the country, they're growing to now be about adults as well. So we went from approximately 80 adult participants last summer to 175 this year. I am biased, but I think that this is evidence that the library is not closed. and I'm not trying to upbraid anyone in this room, but it's real easy to use the word closed. We're not closed. We've been doing a lot. So we had 175 adults log 790 books over the 2 hours of the summer there. And this same department has been doing field trips, story times. One particular very successful event at Tawasenta Park was a family tie-dye program a couple of weeks ago that was very beautiful. And then the reinvention continues. So if you've been serving here for a while, or if you've been a member of the community for a long time, you know that our teen volunteer program is a key way that many teens get hours towards their National Honor Society participation and build their college resumes and so forth. And of course, it's hard to have volunteers in-house during construction and COVID. So teen librarian Brianna Wakowitz turned the whole program virtual, and what the teens are doing is creating video and related content that we can use online. So tapping into those teen tech skills. I want to point out that the IT department is a very interesting report to read. If you didn't get a chance to read it, please do. But one of the things I want to mention is during this whole process, not just IT, but the entire library has tried to avoid throwing things away. So we replaced 2 servers recently, and we were able to donate them to another area library, which is really helpful. Also, a really shining moment for me in my career, just in terms of feeling like we've made a difference in the lives of people, is that during our planning process for the construction, the community kept telling us that they wanted hearing assistance technology in the Helderberg, the large meeting room. But then one day at curbside pickup a couple of months ago, I ran into a patron, Dr. John Hargraves, who is hearing impaired. And he said, "Are you going to put it in the other meeting room too?" And I said, "Boy, I hadn't thought about that, but you're asking at a perfect time." So talked to Sean, talked to some vendors, and we ended up putting it, it's not installed yet, but we will be putting it in both adult meeting rooms and the large children's meeting room. Part of the thinking, of course, there are hearing impaired children, but there are also parents and grandparents that bring the kids to the events. And so John came in, Dr. Hargraves came in a couple different times to talk about his experience with the 3 main families of technology that are used for that, and how they both work and don't work, and how they work in conjunction with each other and so forth. And then the vendor, this is an area where technology is changing so fast that the vendor had a couple of other new technologies that John hadn't heard of yet. So we're ending up putting a mixture of 3 or 4 technologies into the rooms that should make for a redundancy that will make sure that anyone who's hearing impaired, regardless of the quality of their hearing aid, or whether it's Bluetooth, et cetera, should be able to hear our programs. So I just thought that was really awesome. Also, John Larang in the IT department, seated behind me, he and I are 2 of 12 people in the entire Upper Hudson library system who volunteered to test the Kapira mobile app, which has just been instituted by UHLS. So it goes on the App Store, whether you're iOS or Android. It's under the name UHLS Mobile, and it's a completely new version of the app that does a lot more things than the old version. But installing it was an eye-opener for me, because apps as a user tend to just work, but when it's basically like transplanting an organ into a body. There's a lot of connections that you have to make and a lot of tests. And so I don't know about John, but I spent a lot of time sitting on my couch at home watching baseball games and trying every theoretical possibility of, if I search for Hemingway, can I limit the results to each of the 29 different libraries in the Guilderland Library? Laborious process, but it is launched and it's in good shape. I do want to mention that when you leave tonight, you might want to go take a look at the fish tank from both the adult and the youth sides. And also the computer tables were installed today by the adult reference desk, and they're really kind of cool looking. But as far as the fish go, Richard and I, who are the fish subcommittee, we're standing in front of the tank the other day, and we were both a little bit underwhelmed by it. And so Richard asked me if I would call Steve Coletti from Albright Aquariums and talk about whether it was theoretically possible to upgrade from freshwater tropical to saltwater tropical. And he said, well, it is theoretically possible, and it will probably be somewhat expensive, but he said, you guys should hold your horses, because right now there's 15 or 20 fish in there. They're kind of small. That's part of the fact that we're underwhelmed. They're kind of drab looking. And also the aquarium itself is not too bright. And he said, now listen, first of all, you're going to get 20 or 30 more fish in there. Secondly, as they get larger, they will be more colorful. And thirdly, the lighting right now is dim because we're trying to grow bacteria to turn basically all that tap water into an ecosystem. And so the lights can get brighter over time once the pH and the organic nature of the environment is established. So if you do happen to be underwhelmed by the fish tank, be patient, because it will be improving. And let's see, that's it. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, Marcia.
Tim, what's a cage operation?
I noticed that typo. It's a cafe operation. Sorry about that. Yeah, and it says the New York State Association for the Blind is going to help us with our cage operation. It sounds a little macabre, a little like Edgar Allan Poe or something, you know. But anyway, typos. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, definitely reading the reports. The IT report stuck out to me. Typically, IT is a department, if you don't hear from them and they don't hear from you, it's a really nice thing. But when everything has gone virtual and digital and remote, John, Sean, and Tom are probably the unsung heroes of the operations in that regard. So thank you guys so much for the regular work you're doing, the ridiculous pandemic work you've been doing, and then also the technology upgrades that you've been working on through the construction project. It's a full plate for your team, and we really appreciate that.
And even for me, as a library director, I've been astonished at how every single aspect of the building has an IT element to it. Everything we do. So I wouldn't have really agreed to that 3 years ago, but there's no corner of the building that they don't have something to do with making it work. So
That's great to hear. Is there a motion to accept the directors and department heads report for July 2021? Motion by Peter, second by Richard. All in favor? By show of hands, unanimous at 6:44 p.m. First, for old business, committee assignments. Those are in your packets. It's the last page before the draft meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, concerns? I have labeled for everyone whether committees were ad hoc or standing, or in one case contractual. Everybody look that over. If everyone is satisfied with the committee assignments as presented, I would welcome a motion to accept the committee assignments as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Peter, is there a second? By Marcia? Show of hands, all in favor? Unanimous at 6:45. Committee assignments are accepted. Thank you, everybody, very much. Typically, people don't stay on committees for more than 2 years, so a lot of people had come up on their 2-year mark on a committee. I wanted to leave Kathy as chair of the steering committee. You've done such good work. You're almost there. Hang in there. And that committee will eventually go away, as will the COVID Action Committee. So if people find themselves on those, know they'll go away, and you'll still be on 2 standing committees fulfilling your obligations. So. And I hope I got everybody's interests more or less correct. Narina, thank you for volunteering to be on the foundation as well. I appreciate that. So is there any other old business? Excellent. Is there any other new business? Timothy?
I have a couple things, and it's not my intention to have a long discussion, just to kind of introduce subjects that we might be dealing with in subsequent meetings. One is that I'll be sending you a couple of journal articles as soon as I find the best ones to send. There's been a movement in the library world for the last 4 or 5 years for libraries to go fine-free. There are a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into them now, but I've gotten Caitlin's permission to send you some literature about that. And in some subsequent month, perhaps we can have a discussion about that. I mean, if you're terribly curious, you can ask me about it in a minute, but I would say probably best to kind of wait for the background reading. I will just say that we've discussed it as a board a couple of times over the last 3, maybe 4 years, and have not decided in the past to go in that direction. I continue to advocate for it, and that's why I'm asking Caitlin to put it back on the future agenda. An important but relatively minor matter that we will try to, we're working on now that we'll try to resolve with the school district is that our coverages need to be updated because our building is now worth a lot more money than it was prior to the renovation. And also the contents of our building, some of which are not here yet, are going to be worth significantly more than the previous renovation. So the informal agreement in the past was that the school district would insure the building itself and the library would insure the contents. Both organizations happen to have the same insurance broker and the same insurance carrier, and the broker is recommending that one of the organizations carry all of the insurance. So we'll be scheduling a meeting with the school district to talk about that. And I'm not sure, but I think maybe that would be a matter that the finance committee chair, for example, might go to that meeting. I don't know how, what you would think about that, Caitlin.
Yeah, or myself. Either of that I think would be appropriate.
Okay. It's not going to be a huge deal. I don't think there's any, I think it's just for simplicity's sake. Like the taxpayer is the taxpayer and the cost of insuring the place is the cost of insuring the place. And we serve all the same taxpayers. It's just an attempt to streamline the process one way or another.
Does it make sense to do that at the start of a budget year, either organization? Because there's going to be the same pie that's shifted between two organizations.
It might make sense, although there's also an insurance renewal date, which is basically nowish,
Right
right?
now, we're going to work with a temporary policy
Mhm.
to cover new construction. And then once the groups meet and decide on how the billing will take, maybe we can phase in, this is your rotation that matches everything up. But it's a little dicey right now because we've got to get covered the existing changes.
So my next thing to update you about, oh, sorry.
Question.
Mhm.
It's same group that we use.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
What's they thinking about? One.
They're, in essence, their thinking is that if there were some claim to be filed, it would be a lot messier to have both the district and the library working with the carrier to try to resolve the claim, and that one entity buying the insurance would make a claim easier to resolve. And, like if there's a fire, to use the example, and the building is damaged and the contents are damaged, it just strikes him that it will be a much more complicated process if there are two owners of what burned as opposed to one. Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Sure. Okay. Well, I'm sure that whatever is recommended would be brought back before the board and the finance committee, I would think. So, okay, sure. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an expert in insurance and don't want to misrepresent anything to the board. So if they could directly present their proposal to us as a board, that would be, I think, very helpful.
Okay. Mhm. Mhm.
And if any attorneys on the
Or want to take a really close look at it, you're welcome to.
Oh, are you? Okay, cool. Mhm.
So, yes, and if you've got some time, we would appreciate your assistance in the matter.
Super. Thank you. Let me just make a note there, Marcia. Okay, and the next thing to just talk about, I think briefly, is our solar array on the roof. So as you know, we are spending $3,000 as part of the construction project to just reconnect it so we know what it does. And we can promote what it does to the public because it is a value. And that should begin to happen this week and probably end this week as well. It's a small job. But as part of it, one of the reasons we're getting that job done conveniently and for a low cost is that there's a lot of potential on our roof. The system was put up there in 2007, so it's aging, and there have been a lot of technological changes since 2007, as well as sort of business-oriented changes. So, for example, you used to just be able to own your system. Now you can own it or lease it. You used to just be able to put your solar energy into the grid. Now you can put it into the grid or sell it to a third party. So the situation is potentially one of opportunity. The grant cycle for New York State Library, New York State State Ed Library construction grants had a August 2nd deadline for the initial application. So we asked that company to do an estimate of what they would do to modernize our solar array up top. And I have that estimate in hand, and in fact, we've filed it with the Upper Hudson Library System. Now, August 30th is the next deadline, as you note, before our next board meeting, and I have not even had time to look at the estimate. So what I would like to do is scan the estimate and send it out to, I would think, the building committee. And at one of our next meetings, talk about that, see if we see potential there. The timeline of this grant process scares me because we've got a lot going on, and it's a lot to take on, a whole new grant project and more construction. So part of me says, let's just wait a year. Let's digest the proposal and wait a year, and we can apply again next year. The only reason not to do that is that this year that we're in right now is tied with 3 years ago as the years on record where the state has supported the library construction grant program to the highest dollar amount. So we know this year that there are dollars available, and we don't know in a subsequent year that there are dollars available. Frankly, as the director, I'm not going to lose any sleep if I miss that next deadline. But because it would involve scanning this proposal, getting it out to the building committee, having a meeting before August 30th, and rewriting the grant proposal. It doesn't have to be finished on August 30th, but we have to make significant progress on it. So it's kind of a tall and ambitious order. My suggestion is that I start it tomorrow, send it out to the building committee. People take a look at it, and basically I'll do whatever I can do to make sure that grant application remains complete as of August 30th, but I really can't promise anything. I mean, kind of a lot of irons in the fire. So my backup position is I think this is a good thing to do, but I wouldn't be unhappy if we were doing it a year from now instead of now. Any comments, feedback on that? Okay. I see potential there, but I'm not sure we can keep up with the schedule. And the last thing I wanted to kind of discuss with you and ask your opinion, Luann and I have worked a fair amount on the concept of a grand opening. And typically when you're not in COVID, a grand opening of a library facility takes place over 2 or 3 days. It has concerts, it has petting zoos, it has all sorts of activities for families, maybe a chicken barbecue, et cetera, et cetera. And at one point, that was the kind of thing that Megan was suggesting that we do. working for a firm that only does libraries. They're familiar with library grand openings. But our current position, Luann and I, is that doing something like that is probably not a healthy thing to do right now because of COVID. So what we're kind of recommending is that we would do a grand photo op, type thing, some particular day at noon or 2 o'clock or sometime like that. And, and then maybe have, a room like this available where ourselves and then any board members who could devote some time to that might be there throughout the day to kind of, visit with members of the public, perhaps walk around with them, but keep it kind of achievable and health and safety conscious rather than a Lollapalooza. With the idea that presumably will eventually return to normal in our society. Who knows when that will be? But one of the things I plan to bring to the foundation is the idea of doing like a cocktail party with a jazz band inside the library, which we've done once before. Those of you who've been on the board remember that. At a time when it's safe to do. So in essence, deferring the celebratory nature of the grand opening to a later date. I'm personally comfortable with that, but I just kind of wanted to introduce this subject because, again, before we meet again as a board, Luann and I will have needed to figure out exactly what our September or early October grand opening looks like. So certainly open to any comments, but kind of think it's wise to not throw a big party at this point in time. It's sad after a project like this that we've devoted 4.5 years to, but anyway.
Can we bring photographs on our website?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That'd, we can do that and it will help those people, but it'll also draw other people in. They'll go, oh, look at that, and we do want people in here. I mean, that's why we exist. We just want them in here in a safe way and, moderate flow of people. So, but I like that idea. We could actually run video out there, but we don't do that because the town doesn't like it. So it's kind of a driving hazard to run video on something like that. So.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
I'm not quite sure how I feel about this subject. Could we not do some open air event, say at town center?
That's a nice idea.
It's not at the library, but I think as safe and socially distanced as we should do something. I'm not sure. I really just feel badly about letting the occasion pass. But understand all the concerns you're talking about.
I think we could, and I'm not trying to say no by any means, because I'm not inclined to say no. I kind of agree with that, and I hadn't thought of that, as you could probably tell. It's a tight window if you're going to do something in early October or late September, but I could see a concert or a series of speakers or, yep.
I was just going to offer one of the things that higher ed contended with this past spring was the celebrations of commencement. And there were some pretty creative solutions. I know several campuses posted car commencements. And given the new surface area that we have with all of our parking lots, I think there could be the potential to do a limited outdoor, people are distanced in their cars. I mean, it would take some setup on our ends to do some sort of, I don't know, get ice cream for kids. And so I think we might want to think about something like that could be here, sort of say like, this kind of stinks, but we're ready for you when conditions allow.
And the nice thing about like ice cream is if you get the right kind of ice cream, you can do individually packaged, so there's no scooping and breathing on the ice cream.
We could do car hops and go to the.
Roller skates are not
Mandatory. Although I could fall in this parking lot and like, it would be fine. There's no gravel. So like we appreciate that trying to plan an event like this is like nailing Jello to a tree at this point. And so anything, especially when Tim has just said, I don't even know if this grant is gonna, happen in time and stay on schedule. There's a lot on your plates. And we just appreciate any efforts to accommodate it. Agree, we don't want to let this moment pass. We've all worked too hard. But at the same time, we have to work within the limitations of our current situation.
I like the creativity though, and I would encourage you, if an idea comes to you over the next 3 days, just send me an email or send Luann one, of course. And I think you've given us some kind of good ideas to start with that could happen. I do want to add that there's one other opportunity I'm going to be emailing you about where we could use some help. I'll be emailing the board and the foundation, but for the first 2 weeks that we're open, which currently is slated to be starting Monday, September 27th, at staff request, we've committed to having 2 greeters at the door at all times to make sure that people are wearing a mask, and we'll hand them a map of the new facility with an FAQ on the other side and welcome people and so forth. And that'll be a rotation of all staff. But if any board members and or foundation members can devote an hour or 2 here and there, we would love to have you. So, and it might be great just because board members and foundation members both, don't work here. So it might be great if we could schedule, a board member with a staff member, et cetera. So, I will be reaching out and asking for your help with that. So thanks. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Tim. So there will be some new business coming up for us to consider. Tim will send us reading and literature. Thank you for the brief intro to our reading. Is there any public input that's come in? None? Excellent. So there are 4 personnel.
Wait, you missed the minutes.
Oh, I sure did. Thanks. The minutes of the annual and monthly meetings from July 15th, 2021. Is there a motion to accept them? Motion by Noreen, second by Kathy. All in favor?
I have to abstain.
Peter is abstaining. We can still make the motion, so that passes. Peter abstains. Richard has left the meeting. Kathy, Marcia, Narina, Vanessa, Caitlin, and Noreen, all in favor. So that motion still passes.
That's enough. That's 6.
At 7:03. So thank you very much. Now on to personnel actions. There are 4 presented this evening. They are to approve the appointment of Betty Hibbard, part-time provisional library clerk in Access Services Department, effective August 2nd, 2021. Phil Berardi, full-time librarian 1 to full-time librarian 2 in Access Services Department, effective August 16th, 2021. And Heather Nelson, full-time senior library clerk to part-time senior library clerk in Collective Services Department, effective August 25th, 2021. And finally, to accept the resignation of Aria Grisham, part-time library page in Access Services Department, effective August 16th, 2021. Any questions, comments, or concerns on the personnel actions presented this evening? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to accept the personnel actions as presented? Motion by Marcia, second by Kathy. All in favor? Unanimous by show of hands at 7:04 p.m. And that just leads us to the adjournment, if there's nothing else. Motion to adjourn by Peter, second by Marcia. All in favor? Excellent, unanimous at 7:05. The meeting is adjourned.
Can I just add that if you want to go over and see the